Hello, my name is Erin O'Mara. I'm the Executive Director of the Nation Fund for Independent Journalism. Before we get going, can everybody take a minute to find the chat and share where you are right now? Tell us your location and let us know how you're feeling today. I'm in Maine, the state of Maine, and I'm a little nervous talking to this impressive group. I'm also excited because I know today is going to be incredible. So welcome. This is our 8th annual Puffin Nation Fund Student Journalism Conference, our 3rd held virtually, and the first where we're hosting both college and high school journalists. We are so pleased to host such a highly accomplished group of editors, writers, and reporters. You are tuning in from all over. We have attendees from around the globe, from Pakistan, Nepal, Germany, Canada, and Great Britain, as well as coast to coast in the United States. So thank you for joining us for what is going to be a thought-provoking, inspiring, and educational day. We're grateful for your time, your interest, and your work. Thank you to the Puffin Foundation for making this conference possible and for their generous support of student journalism and the mission of the Nation Fund. At the Nation Fund for Independent Journalism, we believe independent journalism has the capacity to bring about a more democratic and equitable world. It informs, engages, connects communities, and empowers people to make decisions to better their lives and the lives of their neighbors. The key to this vision and the fund's mission is to expand opportunities for early career journalists from all backgrounds and to help them on their path to a career in journalism. We believe the student journalists here today will be a part of the wave that not only sets the standards, but raises the standards of journalism. I want to thank Peter Rothberg and Guia Del Prado for all of their work to put this conference together and make it a success. And I want to thank the team who's here today to make your experience seamless. Peter and Gia, Julian Epp, Samantha Schuyler, and Eleanor Buchanan. Thank you all for your incredible work. A few points on how today will go. If at any time you're not sure how to access a session or not sure what to do, please reach out in the chat and someone will help you. For all of our high school journalists, we've developed 2 sessions specifically for you. The first one is at 11:30, directly following our first speaker, Katrina vanden Heuvel. You'll need to depart the main stage, where you are now, for breakout room A, where you'll meet award-winning author and educator, Katina Perrone, and you'll be the very first people to view a brand new 20-minute video primer. Then at 2:15, we'll have a special breakout session with Teen Vogue columnist Rainsford Stauffer. The breakout sessions are your chance to get to know each other and talk face-to-face. For all of our attendees, we love questions. For every session, we'll devote ample time to your questions. Please drop them into the chat. We'll also have lots of networking breaks and breakout sessions where you'll be able to talk to speakers and each other face-to-face. And a note on breakout groups for our college journalists. The breakout sessions are your chance to get to know each other. The idea is for each person to talk a little bit about a recent project, an article, an interview, an investigation, or even just an idea you have. And the group will offer feedback, just like a writing workshop. If you're uncomfortable talking, it's okay to just listen. There will be a Nation editor or writer in each group for questions and comments. You've been randomly assigned to your breakout rooms. Once you join your session, please click the Share My Audio Video button in order to be placed on screen with the rest of your group. College journalists will also have the choice to skip a breakout in favor of the afternoon main stage presentation by Teen Vogue columnist Rainsford Stauffer. I think that covers the housekeeping. Now it's my honor to introduce our first speaker, Katrina vanden Heuvel. Katrina is the editorial director and publisher of The Nation. She served as editor of the magazine from 1995 to 2019, a frequent commentator on U.S. and international politics for ABC, MSNBC, CNN, and PBS. Her articles have appeared in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and the Boston Globe. Katrina is the author of several books, including The Change I Believe in, Fighting for Progress in the Age of Obama, and co-author with Stephen F. Cohn of Voices of Glasnost, Interviews with Gorbachev's Reformers. Vanden Heuvel has been recognized for her journalism and public service by organizations such as Planned Parenthood, the National Women's Political Caucus, the New York Civil Liberties Union, the Center for Community Change, the Norman Mailer Center, the Eleanor Roosevelt Center at Valkill, American Rights at Work, Progressive Congress, and more. During her tenure, the nation's journalism has been recognized for excellence by the National Magazine Awards, the Society for Professional Journalists, the Maggie Awards, GLAAD, and the National Association of Black Journalists, among others. Vanden Heuvel serves on the boards of the Progressive Caucus Center, the Institute for Policy Studies, the Sidney Hillman Media Foundation, the American Committee for U.S.-Russian Accord, Inequality Media, Brave New Films, the Osborne Association, the Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt Institute, and the Four Freedoms Park Conservancy. She is a member of the Council on Foreign Affairs and the Sensory Association. Katrina is extraordinary, and please welcome her to the stage.
Erin, thank you so much for your leadership and in creating this fund, which today leads us on this wonderful journey. I'm going to get off a few of those boards. That's way too long. But I wanted to say a few things that I don't mean to repeat, but I want to thank Erin, Peter Rothberg for his great work, his commitment to this journalism conference over the years, Gia, and a few others, and of course the Puffin family, Neil, Gladys Rosenstein. In honor of the commitment they have made to us, we have renamed the conference. We're deeply grateful to the Puffin Award, the Puffin funding, for allowing us to put this together. I sit here in awe because many of you have run newsrooms larger than the nation. You are committed media change makers. And I think one of the key reasons you're here is what Erin spoke so eloquently about, which is what independent journalism means in a time of corporatization, conglomeratization, may I say Murdochization. The nation has survived since 1865, founded in New York City by men, yes, men committed to ending the scourge, shame of racism, abolitionists. And I think in there, the commitment to independence, both as a business model, but as certainly an editorial model, has defied what we see. And I know many of you interact with this nano changing, radical transformation of media, which is not clear to me. And if anyone has a clarity about where we're going to end up in this changing media landscape, share it with us today. But I wanted to speak for a few minutes about the nation, its history, its present, its future, how it intersects with this moment, and about our work today and some of the current writers you're going to meet and projects that we're embarked on. The nation has long focused on sustaining, oxygenating, instigating change, movements, but above all, it's not a commitment to party politics. It's a commitment to truth-telling and to telling it like it is, which sounds easier than it is in a landscape where there are a lot of demands, a lot of pressures, particularly on younger journalists. So I hope today is a way to think through for you what an alternative is to some of the journalism that has defined our landscape for so long. I think, and I'm sure you feel this in the work you do, we've come out of COVID, we think, but we're in a time of multiple intersecting crises, of banned books and bodies, of climate crisis, of gun violence, which seems endless without end, and economic and racial injustice. Now, these are issues which we cover day in, day out. We have people who are, quote, expert in these areas. We have regulars who write for us on a range of topics. You're going to meet Sasha Abramsky, who, and I think Erin would agree, is someone who's made immigration reform, cruelty, a part of his work in ways that move people to take action and move people to think harder about why we're living with this blight, this horror, this cruelty toward human beings. But so I don't know about you, but I wake some days with despair, but also hope. Partly hope, seeing I don't see you, but I know you're here. But, you know, sometimes you think, what purpose is journalism? I mean, I went into journalism because I believed that you could make change. You could afflict the comfortable, comfort the afflicted, expose abuses. I mean, we have changed the course of people's lives in the sense we covered a case of a woman who was in prison for domestic violence. But after our coverage, more attention was paid. And in that attention, change can be made. And it was. She was released. A New York State Supreme Court justice cited our work on stop and frisk, a tactic used very often in New York City, and declared it unconstitutional based on a video we had done. So there are many ways of making change, but journalism allied with other forces, I think, is a key one, and one that it brought me into journalism. We also, you know, when I say video, so many people, Erin knows this, others, think of The Nation as a magazine. And it is an anchor. We publish 26 times a year. But we are at thenation.com. We're launching a podcast this month with Elie Mystal, our justice correspondent. We have many moving parts to our journalism. I began at The Nation running the telegraph machine. The fax machine slowly arrived. Then there was, you know, computers. Now I tweet too often every day, which is not a good sign. But we have TikTok. We've started to do some TikTok journalism. And AI is confounding us in ways that may be confounding you. I've heard from professors, they don't know what to do. Internet plagiarism was easy compared to this. We've already received 1 or 2 articles we're suspicious were generated by AI. Of course, there are larger concerns about upending the work we do, the militarization of AI, but just explaining the trajectory of the work we do in the context of changing technologies suggests how the radical transformations we are living through and are going to have to think through. So I wanted to say, you know, we bring history to bear. Let me give you one example. And by the way, I think history is an argument without end. And we have some extraordinary historians. I mentioned Eric Foner, the historian of Reconstruction, who on January 6th, a few years ago, at the time of the insurrection, I reached out to him. And he wrote a short piece very quickly, putting in context, giving a history to what we were witnessing those few days. And I think history is important. January 6th is a day marked by infamy. It's also the day Franklin Roosevelt delivered his 4 Freedoms speech. And I would submit 4 freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, freedom from fear, continue to be a charge to us for a better world. But Martin Luther King Jr. wrote a civil rights audit annually from 1961 to 66 for The Nation. When he spoke out against the Vietnam War at Riverside Church, just up the street from where I am, he was castigated. He was denounced by his own community, by liberals, by the media, the New York Times, the Washington Post. The Nation was one of the few outlets which spoke of his moral prophetic vision. Today, we work with someone, if you haven't heard of him, check him out, Reverend William Barber, who stands on King's shoulders and is involved with the Poor People's Campaign. He was in North Carolina just last night with Senator Bernie Sanders, championing, organizing for a $17 minimum wage. Now, we covered Reverend Barber when he was first a voting rights activist in North Carolina. Our longtime voting rights correspondent, Ari Berman, who's now gone to another publication, but he began his work with us. And I just mention that because there's history in much of what we live through. And I think the Nation does a very good job in bringing that to bear without being ponderous and understanding the future lies with you, but that the future is often a better future if it's invested with a knowledge of history. So today you're going to meet some of the great interns. The intern program at the Nation was founded about 40 years ago, and you're going to meet Leila Al-Aryan, Liliana Segura, who's become really the most important. She covers capital defense, death penalty cases, and other criminal injustice. Sasha Abramsky, I mentioned, Sarah Jaffe, who does important labor rights work allied with climate. We have committed in interesting ways to climate. We conceived of a partnership with The Guardian, Columbia Journalism Review, and The Nation called Covering Climate Now. Check it out online. But it is a network, a collaborative network of over 100 media outlets from India to South Carolina, ensuring that resources are committed to journalists so that they do a better, deeper job of covering climate, the crisis, which is of such existential nature. So, I was going to mention a few people, James Baldwin, Eleanor Roosevelt, Michael Moore, Naomi Klein. These are people who over the years have filled our pages and increasingly our pixels, if one can say that. But I hired Chris Hayes at age 28 to be our Washington correspondent. Ari Melber was our technology correspondent. Ellie Mistal, I mentioned. Ellie Mistal is interesting. Our great editor, Lizzie Ratner, really discovered him on Twitter, and he became our justice correspondent. And he's an extraordinary voice, as I hope you know or will know. Ken Klippenstein does work with documents, which remain even in this kind of technological, Twitterized, TikToked way, remain the crux of a lot of investigative reporting and revelations. As we've seen with the leaks, and from Assange to Snowden to the more recent ones, leaks, or rather investigative reporting through documents, remains critical to exposing abuse. So one of the reasons I suspect you're here is that you understand the importance of movements. I think the corporate press, if I might call it that, too often dives in when there's conflict and doesn't treat movements as a kind of normal, important, critical part of politics. The Nation is committed to doing that, whether it's abortion rights, labor rights, human rights. And I think that's one of the reasons a younger generation is interested in an independent media, which oxygenates, sustains. But I do want to be clear. We are a media outlet. We're not an organizing outlet. And I think the critical nature, I'm not sure I've ever believed in objectivity, but I certainly believe in verifiable facts. We have a team of fact checkers like none. I mean, people will work with another publication and say, wow, the Nation aced it, But I do think facts are critical. You have a right to your own opinion, but not to your own facts, someone once said. So I think that's a discussion which I suspect, that you have in your newsrooms. And it's, objectivity is kind of aspire to, but it's not a reality. That's my view. I will say two or three other things. Partnerships. In this time, and Erin knows this, the business model of the nation is an unusual one. We've never really relied on ads, which so many traditional media outlets do. But the fact that we partner with other media institutions on certain big stories is also, I think, a wave of the future. The Marshall Project, which you may know of, was founded by a former Nation intern, Neil Barsky. We have partnered with them. We've partnered with something called the Hechinger Report, which is up at Columbia Journalism School. Economic Hardship Reporting Project is supporting our next cover story on private equity and housing. And that was founded by the writer Barbara Ehrenreich, you may know, but it has been a great force for supporting the kind of journalism the nation champions. I wanted to just end very close to me, the issues of war and peace. On June 12th, 1982, the month we're in, 1 million people gathered in Central Park to protest, call for a nuclear freeze. I say with humility, one of the factors in leading people to fight for a nuclear freeze was a small editorial we did in The Nation in 1982, bringing attention to the nuclear freeze in Northampton, Massachusetts, which was on the ballot. And it really became an organizing, mobilizing tool. But more important, I hope that somehow the climate imperative, the existential crisis will fuse with the nuclear peril, because we are living in a time when the nuclear peril is about as dangerous as it's been in the last 50 years. So that to me is something that I try to bring attention to, as do some of our other writers I work with. So I hope you'll feel a connection to the nation after this conference. Erin laid out some of the days back and forth, but exciting program, something we care deeply about and will continue. And it's not just, it's something we've really committed to, whether it's through the intern program or now through the fund, to really find new voices, whether it's high school or college and beyond. And hope you will be, when you head back to your campuses, a voice. You may be critical, you may be inspired, but to talk about the nation, to tell friends, family, to come to the nation, may not agree, but it might provoke and inspire. So I wanted to end with a quote that there are no lost causes. There are only causes waiting to be won. And one of those causes, by the way, is media freedom, media independence, media force. And I believe in that. And thank you for joining us today. I am now going to repeat, I think, what Erin said, that I have my instructions from Peter Rutherford. So, high school students, please depart the main stage for breakout room A. And then everyone else should stay here for the next panel, moderated by former intern, wonderful contributor. I will say a few words about Sasha. And there's Liliana. I don't mean to make it sound like this is the intern world, but it does seem sometimes that whether it's a Pulitzer Prize or it's an investigation that gets someone off death row, that it's the nation intern who's been involved. But Sasha, welcome. Sasha's getting married. That's what I begin with in the fall. But not more important, but relevant for today.
Yeah, Katrina, I think we have a few minutes.
I saw Sasha and Liliana, but I will introduce Sasha after our Q&A.
Yeah, we have some great questions. So from Emma Dinsmore, what would you say is the most challenging things about building new audiences for the nation?
Terrific question. I think it's an interesting time for the nation because we have different audiences, as Erin knows. The print is an older audience, but the web, thenation.com, is maybe 22 to 34 years old. Now, that may seem old, but it's nation young. I think the topics, we've talked over the years about high school nation. I don't love that idea because I think we should be covering issues at the nation that are part of the community of high school, college, younger. And I think climate is one that engages, but other issues are now, it seems to me, central to a younger generation's both struggles and interest in the kind of journalism. We're doing a special issue on abortion rights. It's a different title, but I think there's an extraordinary energy around movements that the nation has championed. So I think we are doing a better job, sometimes targeted. I also think, and I was interested, the cultural piece. The nation is 1/3 arts, books, and the arts. And what interested me, and you may think I'm old, but Lucinda Williams, an interview with the great musician, was #1 on our site for a week. So I think that there's a piece of bringing in a younger generation through culture that has been part of the landscape for years. But we make a commitment. And I would say on any given week, Peter Rothberg is proud of this, but we have student fellows around the country, Student Nation fellows, and 2 of the top 5 pieces are often Student Nation pieces. So we're already bringing in younger voices, but what they write about appeals to younger audiences.
Thank you. Madeline Jans says, Katrina, you've seen the nation through so many changes in the media industry. What pivot has been the most difficult for the magazine, and how did you manage it?
I think the ongoing pivot that is difficult is keeping the nation alive as a independent force, because the business models are often ads, venture capital, and we're seeing the limits of venture capital for sure with Vice or BuzzFeed. But I think the key is to keep that pivot focused on keeping the nation alive. And that is a measure of quality journalism, independent journalism, but also finding a business model. I wanted to mention Bhaskar Sankara, who founded Jacobin, has joined us as our president. And I think, there's rethinking going on, but I focus on the survival. The survival of the nation is a different business model, not being held captive to special interests, and an independent voice, which keeps going.
Thank you. We do have more questions, though we're running into the next panel. So thank you so much, Katrina. And
thank you, Erin.
I'll leave you to introduce the next set of speakers.